This week on Still, Kiwis and Characters in Motorsport, I meet a man simply known in hot rodding circles as Kiwi Kev, and catch up with New Zealand Motorsport Wall of Famer Dave McMillan and learn a little about how aircraft and motorsport all come together. Hello, I'm Bob McMurray and welcome back to Still, Kiwis and Characters in Motorsport. I start this week's show at the racing capital of the world, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And in our IndyCar segment this week, I take a look at the senior member of the Dixon clan, and I asked him what it takes for a Kiwi to get here. Ron Dixon, with your son's career, stellar career, there can be few people who understand the US motorsport scene better than you. What do Kiwis have to do to get up into the motorsport scene, drivers or mechanics?
Years ago it was a lot easier. Now with immigration and things like that, it's a lot harder. You've got to have the qualifications or somebody has to sponsor you. But years ago, a lot of the mechanics that we all know over the years, they came up here and knocked on doors and got jobs and applied for visas that they could stay and work here and progress from there. But now the whole system is difficult to get into. I came up here purely with Scott and everything, and then did a lot of driver coaching and things like that. But for the engineers, mechanics and things like that, they have to have some sort of qualification that entitles them to come to the US and to work here.
And what about drivers? I mean, a driver can still come up here and drive a season of racing without the sort of green card thing?
Yeah, they do. Most of the drivers come up and do their testing under the visa waiver, that type of system. Once they get a contract as a driver with a team, then will give them basically it's an entertainment visa. So that allows them, sometimes it has to be renewed every year, sometimes it's 3 years, depending on the length of the contract. So for drivers, it's still pretty wide open. America's pretty, they open arms when it comes to entertainment. And I'm still very much passionate about New Zealanders, Kiwis as a whole, and the opportunities aren't as good as they used to be up here. But if there's anything I can help anybody with, I'd definitely go out of my way to do that.
The US motorsport scene would be poorer if there were no Kiwis around.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, as you say, it doesn't matter if you go to a drag race meeting or go to NASCAR or IRL or any of the smaller meetings, there's always a lot of Kiwis there. And the other thing is that you go to a midget day, night or evening or something like that, there's a lot of them Kiwi mechanics are racing as well. So they've all got the passion. There's more, most probably Kiwis in the US that are around motorsport as a whole. I mean, there's just so many of them, and we have some pretty tremendous evenings when we all get together.
So the secret is then same as before, but way more determination.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's just like everything, the economy, nothing's helping at the moment, so it's just a matter of determination, and the big thing is Kiwis have got good work ethics, and I think that gets them a long way. So if you go to any of the, well, you will be going to a lot of the different teams, whether it's Chip Ganassi and Target, there's Kiwis there. You go to Andretti and there's Kiwis there. So and the ones that have been here for a lot of years hold pretty important positions now and are really a main part of the racing scene.
Leaving Indy for a little while now and back here on the West Coast, and the city of Ventura sits about an hour and a half north of Los Angeles. There you'll find a hot rod builder called Kiwi Kev. He's a bit of a character, and so is his backyard. Kevin, I don't really know where to start, so we'll start at the beginning. Where and when did your love affair with hot rods start?
I remember from being about 12 or 13, being hooked on reading hot rod magazines and building a lot of model cars, and around the same time the movie American Graffiti came out, and that was a big influence, and that was also when the Champion Dragway opened at Mary and I used to, I lived close enough where I could go to a lot of the racing down there, and it's never slowed down for me, just always been hooked on it since then.
How did you learn to chop cars? You just don't get hold of a car and take the top off.
Probably reading a lot of the magazines, you learn a lot of these things if you kind of pay attention to what's going on in there, and just looking at other people's stuff, and they weren't always done right at the start, so you teach yourself as you go. You make some mistakes along the way, and like in most things, that's how you learn.
And what brought you to America?
When I was in my late teens, I used to get very jealous of people that would go on trips to America, so I planned one for myself, and I came for like a 3-month trip, and on that trip I met a guy who told me when I left that if I wanted to come back and work, he'd put me to work. So, I just decided that's what I wanted to do. I just made the big move and did it, and I didn't know how it was going to work out, but I figured it would be a good adventure, and it's worked out pretty good for me.
So was it a dream of yours to do this, or did you sort of get into it by accident?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean, do what? It's just life for me. So I feel like I'm kind of living a dream, or how I want to live. Hot rodder's life, I guess you'd call it. I get to go to a lot of events over here that I always used to. Even though it's a long time ago now, some of the same events are happening. Like I just went to the LA Roadster Show and Father's Day Swap Meet, and I did that on my first trip also, and that was 30 years ago, and I've been going to every one since. I only missed one in 30 years, so I guess that's still living the same dream I had when I first came over.
Now, you're a bit of a legend in hot rodding circles.
No, I don't think so, man. You've been talking to the wrong people.
How many cars have you actually turned into hot rods?
Well, not that many, really. For myself, maybe and the ones that actually made it to the road, probably 5 or 6 or something like that. I've done a lot of work for local guys over the years. I worked, full-time 12 years doing just hot rod fabrication in my backyard shop, and there's when I think back, there's a lot of, but they're not all complete builds. It's just some guy might want a set of headers built, another guy might need a floor built. It's just whatever they needed, I'd do it for them if I was capable.
So building hot rods was actually a business for you?
Never in New Zealand. When I lived in New Zealand, I worked first in a little shop that built horse trailers, and then I worked for Demet Fruhoff Trailers, so that's big truck stuff. And I kind of, learned some welding skills and fabricating skills then that I just turned into a business after several years of doing different things here. It wasn't right away that I did it here, but I just kind of slowly learned more and look at other cars and see how people are building things, and I'm like, that looks pretty easy, And I do still do work for other people on weekends. Aside from my full-time job, I work on cars for other people on weekends.
So would you take one of these back to New Zealand, build one here and take it back home?
Oh, that would be awesome if I could. I don't think I could afford to do that, but that'd be pretty cool if I could do that.
The beaches of Southern California in the summer. More from Kevin in an upcoming show. But after the break, it's back to Indy to look at the business of sport with 3 very different Kiwis. That's all after the break on Still Kiwis and Characters in Motorsport.
Because the rear is too stuck.
After many years with the Andretti Green racing team, Kiwi Dave Algie decided to venture out into a little business venture of his own. Not strictly motorsport, but heavily motorsport related.
racing tends to move towards the drivers and the owners. If you're not a driver and owner, when you're done with it, that's it. There's nothing more. You're on your own. So this, at least, I thought I had a future with it, and it was. I like to create things, and I wanted something of my own creation rather than working on other people's designs. So this was my goal, to basically bring race car technology into aviation. I think it adapts well into it. There's a lot of benefits to it: weight, crashworthiness, that sort of thing, and I think it's been a good way to go.
How did you actually get to design something like this?
I took a look at the best of kit planes out there, light aircraft out there of the day. It's been quite a few years back, and realised that I could probably adapt this technology into it well and improve on them somewhat, not by reinventing the wheel, just by basically improving every small aspect I could. And I think this was what I've come up with. So I don't tend to name stuff. We didn't ever name race cars, and so we would just, the company is Algae Composite Aircraft, I guess, but just the LP one, light pressurised one. It's a personal, useful transportation mode where potentially you can beat airline schedules. It's a Ferrari. It's a Ferrari, 430 or something, but in aviation. It's that sort of thing. Personal. It's a two-seat, comfortable, height fast, pressurised.
What are the main points of difference of this aircraft as compared to any other one of the same size?
The biggest one most aircraft guys come up with is the engine package. It's based off a Corvette engine. I've turbocharged it, turbo-normalised it, and not done a lot to it, but there's not a lot of aircraft stuff in this plane. It's all race car type, automotive type stuff.
With this engine and the weight of the aircraft, there must be a very big power to weight ratio.
It shows about a 5,800 feet per minute climb, and a 385 mile an hour cruise at 29,000 feet. So it's certainly moving along. You're covering over 6 miles per minute, and sea level pressurization at that altitude. So typically they are over 100 mile an hour slower than this.
Slower?
Yeah.
It's 160 kilometres an hour slower than your aircraft. And less fuel efficient, presumably, because this will be lighter.
It's quite a fuel efficient engine. It's modern electronic fuel injection, closed loop. And the airframe is quite a bit lighter. That's where I save a lot of it. And I'm willing to fly at high altitudes for low drag.
Now, the aircraft has not flown yet. When's the maiden flight going to be?
Early spring next year is what we're aiming for. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me, of course. Down the road, there's a potential for a 4-seat. This being a modular aircraft, I could use a lot of the components with it and just adapt up to a 4-seat design.
And being a business, you've got to sell them. Have you sold any yet?
I've now taken 5 deposits, so I'm looking pretty good. That's picked everything up quite a long way. I think that's a testament to people believing in what this is, without being ever flown yet. So.
You have a pilot's license yourself?
No, I'm not a pilot.
No. But I guess most race drivers don't have a constructor's license either, do they?
True, right. Yeah, I'm on the builder side of it. I'll eventually get a pilot's license, but it doesn't help this project right now, so I just don't do it.
So Algae Composite Aircraft as a company, where do you see yourself and the company being in, say, 5 or 10 years' time?
We're producing these kits, a reasonable number of them a year, not ever huge volume, but just enough to satisfy demand. And we're working on 4-place and maybe other projects, but it's confined to this right now.
So we could see one of these in New Zealand in 2-3 years' time?
Quite easily, yeah.
From planes to cars, they're all still Kiwis at heart, and my next guest is Motorsport Wall of Famer Dave McMillan. We talked at his home in Brownsburg in the middle of a thunderstorm about the road to Indy. Dave, when you left New Zealand, you had the whole world at your feet. You could go anywhere. So why America?
That's a good question. First of all, I went to England with Graham Lawrence, and I worked over there for a year. And then I then came to Canada and then down to the United States. And the reason I stayed in the United States was because I think that the people, the drivers or the sponsors or the owners appreciated you or me as a mechanic, and where they didn't appreciate you so much back in those days in England. And for that reason I stayed here.
Did you ever want to drive? I mean, there's a heck of a lot of motorsport around here and a good few Kiwis in motorsport around here. Did it occur to you might want to resurrect your career here?
I always wanted to drive because I was involved with a Motordrome race team with Ivan Sedgwick and Dennis Marwood and Howden Ganley, Ross Greenville, and it was something I always wanted to do. And my first race was at Matamata on the street race, and I drove Ivan Sedgwick's Anglia. It was 105E, and it was his personal car, and I drove it there.
And since you've been in America, you've become a team owner and you were very successful in the Atlantic Series. How has your career in America progressed?
I don't know, it's progressed. We've had ups and downs, and I think motor racing in general is very, very tough here in the United States, probably tough in the world, because you can see the number of cars in the fields are gone down. I've been involved since 2003 in Indy Lights. I love it. I think it's a great racing. I think the oval racing is great. But last year there was 25 to 27 cars. Now they're down to 14 cars. So you can see there's not a lot of money around, and that's really hurts us. It costs $750 to $1 million for Indy Lights, and there's just not that sort of money around.
What advice can you give to a young driver who wants to come to America? How's he going to do it these days? Harder than in your day?
Very much harder, because what it costs now is 4 times as much. A young driver, depending on his age, if he wants to go Formula One, he's got to go to Europe, number one. And then if he wants to go the other route and possibly has the money to come to America, America is certainly cheaper than what England is, that's for sure. Then it's a good idea. And they've got some very good formulas here right now that is good for the up-and-coming guy.
Dave, you were one of the very first people to be inducted into the Motorsport New Zealand Wall of Fame. How do you feel about that?
At the time I didn't know it was happening, and Gary Pedersen represented and gave a very long speech, I understand, but I think it's an honour, a really, really nice honour. But the only thing that sort of I've been thinking about is, am I above Robbie Finišović or below him? I'd be happy if I'm above.
So Dave, tell me, are you happy here?
Oh, yeah, yes and no. If I had my own team and we had a full budget going on rather than part-time right in this moment, I'd be very happy. I would love to run some young New Zealander or run a young person that we could go out and have fun.
Back in the exciting world of NASCAR now at Michigan International Speedway. Do you know there's one guy that understands Kiwi mechanics and Kiwis in motorsport perhaps better than any others, and that's a guy called Steve Hallam. Steve Hallam worked for the McLaren Formula One team for many years and worked with many, many Kiwis. Steve Hallam is now the Director of Competition for Michael Waltrip Racing, and he sits up here calling the race, controlling the race for those drivers. Kiwis in motorsport, you not only have been working for a Kiwi team for some time with Bruce McLaren, but you have also dealt with a lot of Kiwis in your time.
I have indeed, some very good ones. Stephen Giles, who was chief mechanic with me at McLaren for several years, was one notable one, and if you're asking me to name some more, I'm going to struggle other than you at the moment, but I know there have been many.
You are very English, coming to NASCAR. That's a huge change for somebody like you.
It is. I've only ever worked for 3 racing teams in my life: Lotus, McLaren, and now Michael Waltrip Racing. When I had the opportunity to change from Formula One into NASCAR, it wasn't really a very difficult choice to make. My wife will kill me for saying this, but you're only on this planet once, and you've just got to make the most of every opportunity that you can or comes your way. And in reality, there are only 2 major motor racing series in the world: Formula One and NASCAR. I know other people may have different views, but the reality of it is that's where the big audiences are and the biggest budgets are spent. And to have the opportunity to leave a very successful Formula One career and come and embark on a NASCAR career before I finally wear myself out was an opportunity too good to miss. Culturally they're very different, but fundamentally they're identical. You've got 4 pieces of rubber, i.e. the tyres, in contact with the ground. You've got a race, a different track every week here in NASCAR, and a checkered flag at the end of the race. First one across the line wins. So, the basics are all the same.
We've been speaking with Steve Hallam. He's come into the Michael Waltrip Racing setup. Has that helped you in any way, having a European look at things?
Steve's been a good asset for our team. He's come in from Toyota's angle, and he helps bringing that level of professionalism to our engineering department. Don't forget, we're spending millions of dollars in engineering. We've got 20, 30 guys full-time on engineering projects, and those guys have got to be harnessed. That talent has to be harnessed and put into practical use on the racetrack. And so you've got to have someone of Steve's calibre to really guide the team to focus on areas that need to be focused on first. At the end of the day, it's hard to translate Steve's input into actual race results, but I think as a whole team, we're more coherent and we've got a clearer path.
Steve, one question I have to ask. 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, we noticed all the garage doors going down and everybody clearing off home.
The garage opening and closing times and the concept of this has been really refreshing for me, because in Formula One, as you know, with the exception of Saturday evening at 6:30 when the car's going to Parc Fermé, from the moment you arrive at the track to that point in time, you could be awake all of those hours. Hopefully you would never have to be, but you were not constrained in any way. Here, you can only bring what you can get on the truck. The wheels are transported completely separately. The trucks were allowed in to park only at 7 o'clock on Thursday evening. And we turned up and we were waiting outside the gate. At 6:30 on Friday morning, they opened the gates and we come in, we unload the cars, we get the cars ready through technical inspection, warmed up, any final setup changes done, and we're on track at 11:30. And if you can't do it in that time, you're in trouble. So, and then it closed, we did practice and qualifying, and the garage closed at 6:30 on Friday evening. And you had to be ready to get going the next morning when it opened at 9 o'clock, closed again at 3 o'clock. In that window, we did 2 practice sessions and our race preparation. And we come in this morning, garage opened at 7. We did our final race prep, and as you can see, the cars are going through technical inspection now.
So if you had, in the last couple of laps of the free practice, we called it yesterday, a fairly major, you're in deep doo-doo.
Well, we've got a backup car up there, which you
can
have
use
to
that
keep up
straight
there.
away, okay.
If you pull it out and use it, and you can only use it if the NASCAR officials say, okay, we can see that's not repairable in the time frame that you've got. You pull it out, you start at the back.
Fascinating.
Conceptually, it's fantastic. Everybody gets a night's sleep. Everybody gets to have dinner sitting down in a relaxed state. No one's eating on the run. It's very, very controlled. It's wonderful.
Well, Steve Harriman's busy race day finished some time ago, but you can see the crowd. This massive crowd here at Michigan have got no intention of going home yet, and nor have I, because I'm going to get myself a t-shirt. Okay, so I got the t-shirt. On the next Still Kiwis and Characters, I meet with the team manager at Andretti Motorsport, Paul Harkis, known as Ziggy to his friends, and venture back to the Los Angeles area to talk top fuel drag racing, amongst other things that is, and that's all in the show next time. But for now, thanks for watching Still Kiwis and Characters in Motorsport.